discussion and possible vote on a compact with the community. And then we'll be joined by Jeff Lubian, Chair of the Warrant Committee.
Mr. Lubian.
Hello, good evening. Jeff Lubian, Chair of the Warrant Committee. I want to bring forward to you what I'm calling is a framework for the compact, not the actual compact.
Before you begin, Jeff, do we have that?
Did you send that?
I did send it.
No, but can we put it on the screen?
Oh,
Mr. Chair, I have it here, but that's a good point. I think it'd be great for the community to see it.
I'm freezing. I'm gonna grab my coat.
You know, Elizabeth, I'm sorry. I had this heat shut off. You want me to turn it on again?
No. I said
Is the heat turned on over there?
I can put on layers. Turn it up.
I was over here. It felt like I was in the sauna.
That's okay. I am naturally.
I can turn it on.
I'm naturally chilly.
I turned it down. That's the other
When
side.
do you turn
We
it on?
conducted these meetings on a Tempur-Pedic mattress. We'd all be.
Turn it on. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. I didn't mean to create a chilly, yeah. I'm surprised. You're chilly with all the heated debate that we've had right now. Should be warmed up. Thank you. Sorry, Elizabeth.
Make some noise.
Patrice has turned on the heat again.
There we go. We can hear it.
Oh, God.
Okay, so here I'm going to be bringing forth a framework for the compact, not the actual compact.
But leave it. It takes a minute to come up. Please continue, Jeff.
Yes. And just as how we got what we got here. So this one thing we talked about with the warrant committee through all our deliberations about the override and the 3-year financial outlook. And in particular, I came before the board and mentioned that the warrant committee as a whole agreed that a sizable override was needed to meet the structural deficit, the short-term structural deficit. There was some disagreement about the level, but in general, at least a $6.5 million we all agreed was needed for year one. And then if you break it out for 3 years, you need about 7.4. And then obviously an 8.4 is now put forward. And what we really framed and I framed was that this is helping us with stability. This allows us to, as we discussed earlier, not to cut any significant services and also to potentially do some investments with the 8.4. But what we started to look towards is pivoting is the next 3 years. And if we don't put in measures for sustainability, we're going to be in a situation within 3 years where there'll be potentially another sizable override needed if we don't form some sort of controls on a lot of factors. And one thing that was pointed out, I think, Mark, you brought it up, that you heard about other towns doing this. Marie Warner on the warrant committee had distributed to the warrant committee. A bunch of towns are going for these financial compacts where there's agreement and goals and policies and procedures that will be put in place so that we can manage the next override and also potentially manage to a much less sizable override. So what we did is because the timeline is very, very compressed, as we all know, a small group of us, myself and Tom Caputo at first took a pass at this. We did share high level iterations with the chair of the school committee, because eventually I think this is something we want to have a larger group take a look at. And then I did bring in who are part of the executive team, Paul Richter and Connor McEachran took a look at it and gave some feedback. We did share it with the warrant committee last week, again, this framework, and we're going to take it up at a shortened meeting on Wednesday to what I'm hoping is to get some feedback, make some tweaks, and then vote this as a support of this framework. And that's what I was going to review with you tonight, but just wanted to give you some context.
Jeff, did you say that you had, I think, some input from our current chair of the select board as well?
Yes, and the select board chair, sorry, Roy as well, yes.
All three bodies.
Yep.
School committee, warrant committee, select.
And again, this was done, quickly because of the time constraints. And again, this is a framework for a committee, a larger group to kind of work through the details.
I will say that Jeff took the lead on getting this going, which we greatly appreciate. We've all been busy and distracted, and yet this is critically important. I am working, which again, I'm allowed to do with the Yes campaign. It was something that we identified needed to happen. It was a major component of why and how Arlington had a successful override, was that they had a similar compact with their voters. And yes, the cuts are scary if the override doesn't pass, and people need to understand what those cuts are. But I've always said an override would be predicated on two things, trust and hope. That voters need to trust that we are managing carefully the resources we already have, and they need to hope that there's a plan. And I think this is a key piece in both of those. I think this is foundational to engendering trust and hope, which is ultimately what I think will persuade people to put their faith in us.
Agreed. So this framework goes through a few bullet points here. I'll go through them quickly and just give a little flavor behind them of guidance to what we're still trying to figure out. We'll call it a working group where there might be some key individuals from each of the committees to really take this as a framework and then go ahead and put more details and more thought behind it because of, again, the time constraints are just real right now. And this is something that we'd look to start this spring. As soon as I think at least the select board and warrant committee were to sign off on this framework. And then it would be, as we always like to call our summer projects, and have it up and running well before the budget summits next in the fall. And I'm really also looking for buy-in and input from all the major committees, select board, school committee, capital budget committee, and the warrant committee. So
There was one, I'm sorry, did you want to finish?
I think it goes.
I was just going to go through them high and then,
Before you go through, can I just note at least what I thought was an omission, which is I think we do need to commit to senior tax relief.
so we can touch base on that one.
Okay.
Agreed on that one, but
So first off, and this is probably the first two are probably the boldest of the statements, and that's really going to drive the compact. Is we are saying no additional Proposition 2.5 override prior to fiscal 28 at the earliest, and that doesn't even necessarily mean that we'd want one in 28, but that commitment I think needs to be made and needs to be part of this compact that's eventually developed. Reduce annual expenses and growth rates, fiscal 26 and 27. I mean, this is something I think we need to look even further. So the expenditures are more closely in line with revenues. And this will provide, as I mentioned earlier, stability and sustainability. So you mentioned this earlier in discussions, bending the curve, bringing our growth rates more in line with our revenues. And then we've also talked in future bullets about other ways of growing our revenues to also help offset some of these challenges we face. And here we go. Pursue policies to spur revenue growth and diversity of our tax base. And this is through zoning changes to promote economic development and business growth. So we've already started implementing some of these key zoning changes last town meeting. I know there's more that's coming up. There's more talk about becoming more business friendly and trying to drive more commercial. I think that needs to be part of the compact. It doesn't mean that the warrant committee is going to be doing all that work. It just means we're promoting that this is something that Economic Development Committee, Vision 21, Select Board, Planning Board would focus on. The next one, substantially reduce the reliance on one-time sources to fund the operating budget and place excess free cash each year generated by turnbacks or excess revenue into specific stabilization funds and capital projects. I know it's a long one there, but this is something I think is probably the most fleshed out one, where we talked about that we will use 3 million of reoccurring free cash. But anything above and beyond that should either go to capital projects within that year that are needed, or to a general stabilization fund or a capital stabilization fund to fund these projects that we know are coming, like the Chenery roof and HVA system. So if we can do that and get those funds built, then we have that flexibility. And these are things we would constantly monitor too over time. Next is invest in key initiatives to reduce future expenses, including developing in-district special education program, identifying town and school organizational structure efficiencies. So this was already specified to a degree in the override discussions, that there's going to be investment in the schools to bring more in-district, to bring in the district more out of special education. We know that that's costly, but we also know it's really the right move for the students as well, to be within their classes and be able to do extracurricular and not spend so much time traveling. The next would be bolster much needed town services, including revamping aging curriculum. So that's another investment that would be made if the override is passed, but to emphasize that because it does help with long-term costs. And then expand discretionary capital investment in sidewalks. So again, this is stating what we've kind of already put in the comments about the override. Provide transparent budgeting and multi-year financial planning, including the creation of a fiscal planning group with representation from boards, committees, town and school administration, and town residents. So this one is an area where I think we need to, the group will need to do some more research into. Some of the other towns have created what they call long-term fiscal planning committee that has a mix of different individuals from the different boards and committees, town employees, and then also potentially some town residents. This is a committee that would really be always looking to the 3 years, over the next 3 years. They wouldn't be as concerned with the immediate budget. They would give an update during a budget process, but they're really looking out and looking for warning signs, or if we get to a point where there's some concerns about the deficit, a potential deficit. Again, what this committee would look like, how often, what would be their charter is something we would look for this group to flesh out. And then the last one is protect against future shocks by maintaining adequate financial reserves and strong bond rating. So this is sticking to our free cash policy, our reserve policy, building up stabilization funds. There's rules around recommendations around that. And we know that we're always constantly going to have capital needs. And so if anything we can put away towards future capital investment would be advisable. So again, a framework that then we can use to help a small group create the compact with this focus in mind.
Well, in some sense, I think we're doing a lot of these things, but I think to declare it as a kind of a more formal statement of principles, I think is a good thing.
Mhm.
And the first bullet, I think we have to keep emphasizing. It's not just noble words or aspirations. I think the bottom line here is the next override. It's the first bullet, I think, is got to be a commitment.
I completely agree. And I think everyone on the warrant committee is behind that.
So for the next 3 budget seasons, 25, 26, 27, there would not be, well, there's an override for the 25 budget. Beyond that, 26 and 27, it would not be. Understood. So it's very well done, Jeff. Can compliment you and
Tom did a lot of heavy lifting too. So
and others that worked on it. You and I have talked quite a bit. I've said publicly as well that I think a compact with the community is needed. And so I think it's great that the committee that will be formed will continue to sort of flesh out some of these ideas and framework and make that commitment on behalf of the Select Board, Warrant Committee, Capital Budget Committee, and School Committee to the residents of our community.
Mhm.
This is what we're committing ourselves to, because you said at the very top, and I've said this publicly, that we certainly need to first stabilize the town finances, and hopefully there is successful override in the spring. But we have to look, it's not just stability, it's also sustainability.
right.
And that will give us the opportunity, which frankly, we've never really had. We had an override success in 2015 for the 2016 budget that we'd be able to sort of use for a number of years. Given enough of additional resources, we can't expect state aid to increase, and municipal services, other municipal receipts don't increase that dramatically to keep us going. But it'll create enough of a stable fiscal environment that we can create a more sustainable fiscal future. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Welcome.
Jeff, can you speak any more to senior tax relief?
So yeah, so it was brought up by the warrant committee, and the one concern, and this is something we're going to still discuss on Wednesday, was, as you know, it is a difficult. You were part of that whole analysis, and it's a difficult thing. It's something difficult to implement.
Yeah.
We didn't want to promise something that might take so long to implement, and even then only affect a certain percentage of the population, that we felt it was a little, we didn't want to come back in a year and say we haven't done anything, because it is such a monumental task to figure out the best way to implement something, get the state to sign off on it through a home rule petition. And then depending on how the means test, the number of people this might impact is not to a scale that you'd like. I'm not saying we're not all for it, but it's definitely something of difficult. So happy to put it. If anyone has any recommendations how to word it, so we,
Think a commitment to keep working toward that is still an
Yeah,
item,
I
it's
could
still a priority. And believe me, nobody understands difficulties more than the chair and I do, because we've been stymied
Right.
in our efforts, and people who know will know what I'm saying.
yeah,
But that is a commitment that
So we can-
I at least am.
We can add that to this framework.
Yep.
Elizabeth, is that, so that's a home rule petition in order to
It
get
would be a
some
home
tax
rule
relief?
petition.
Yeah.
It's been done successfully. Sudbury did one.
Okay, yeah, I think we need to
It
commit
can be
ourselves to
done,
that.
but I think
Working on it.
it requires an analysis and some input where frankly, we need help from the Board of Assessors. So,
Okay, fair enough. So we can add that to it.
yeah, we can add that.
You want us to, I'm happy to vote for this framework, colleagues.
Public endorsement of it, I mean.
Yeah, I'm happy to vote for it with that.
To the comment.
One addition, I'm happy to sort of frame it in that well. So I think this framework and maybe others that you come up with, as part of the working group that's going to be formed, but I think this is a very good start.
Yeah, if it's revised, we can approve a revised version, but I think it is important we approve this tonight.
Well, I will put it in and I'm sure the warrant committee will.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, I move,
To endorse?
yeah, I'm just trying to think of that word. Is it endorse? I move to endorse the framework of the override. Is it a compact or commitment? So it's a framework of, let me just see if I can phrase this better. Sorry. I move to support the framework of a compact with the community as presented this evening, with the addition of a commitment to continue to analyze senior tax relief.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.